Hi, rock climbing in the Philippines. Today we're going to discuss a piece of news that came out last week, which tells us that in Britain, in the UK, the Tavistock Centre, which was the primary centre for the care of juvenile transgender people, or putative transgender people, who were under the age of 18 in England and Wales, is about to be replaced. So that's the service for people under 18 is about to change radically. Now, before we go there, please remember we do need your money. I'm sorry. I know you don't like me asking for money. I have to ask for money. It's that simple. Otherwise, we don't eat, and you don't get any of these wonderful videos. Okay? It's as simple as join the Patreon. You need to join the various other means that we've got, which will allow you to help contribute towards my survival and the production of these videos. Please understand, YT's monetization system is an absolute joke. It's a total joke. $40 a month. That's it. That's all I get on a good month. You know? So there is really no incentive for me at all to make videos other than if you pay me. Okay? So are we clear? You're going to have to pay me. The addresses, as always, are there and they have been up for the last minute or so for you to go to. Now, the Tavistock. To let you understand, the Tavistock, which used to be called the Portman and Tavistock, was the primary, or is the primary, centre for the care of young people with gender dysphoria. That is, shoes the dogs. That is people under the age of 18 who have been referred to it as cases of gender dysphoria. Now, the Portman deals with all types of gender dysphoria. What has happened since this announcement is that the TERFs have gone nuts and the TRAs have gone nuts for the same reason. They just didn't actually read the story. The Tavistock, yes, is being closed, but it is being replaced by other centres, right? At least 2 centres in London alone and other regional centres which will replace the expertise of the Tavistock and make it more regionally based. At the moment, you have a situation where young people might have to travel 300 miles just to go to a clinic for an appointment. This is clearly unreasonable. It's totally wrong. I've said for years it's totally wrong. There are other problems with the Tavistock. We'll come to those. Why has this situation actually arisen, that you have this crazy situation where people have to travel so far? And for that, you need to go back to the late 1980s, in fact, when the NHS had really got itself in a lot of trouble financially. It was in a real mess. And one of the problems was that it had taken on a very large number of non-clinical staff and was paying them very large amounts of money, which had made the whole thing basically over budget. And I could quote examples. It was shocking. So what the government did was it decided that it would develop a new model of healthcare in which there would be very large, all-purpose centres, right, in big cities, and people from all around would go there for their treatment. And sometimes this would mean they would have to travel 50, 60, 100 miles, and depended on the type of treatment, because some of these clinics, these specialist hospitals, had particular areas that they provided service for, and the Tavistock happened to be the one that provided for people with gender dysphoria under the age of 18. Do you see where it's going to? Now, the fact is that this centralised model of the NHS health provision was a total disaster. It was a complete failure. The reason being that taking people who are potentially on the point of dying and asking them to be moved 50 miles to get primary care, emergency care, is absolutely ridiculous. And this is what this it was a kind of system that only an accountant could possibly have thought of. This is basically what this system guaranteed. I mean, when my mother was dying of cancer, we had terrible problems. On one occasion, when she was literally on the verge of pegging out, it took 8 hours for an ambulance to arrive so that she could be transferred to this ridiculous hospital that she had to go to, which was 50 miles away. So by the time the ambulance actually bloody arrived, I mean, she was on her last legs. And the ambulance men were like, well, this is an emergency. We've got to give her oxygen. We've got to get her in, da. And it was a major panic. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that has happened. And what happened in the Tavistock, now the Tavistock, was that it had built up a very specialist core of knowledge. And to understand that, you also need to go back 30 years, and that is to the point when these big centres were first put together. And at that time, nearly everybody who was going forward for, shall we call it, gender dysphoria under the age of 18 was homosexual. Nearly everybody. Prior to 1990, AGPs were nowhere to be seen, basically. They were all weekend cross-dressing, and doing whatever it is the AGPs do. Nearly everybody who was going to these centres was HSTS, or homosexual, to become homosexual, transsexual, and there were very few of them. And, incredibly, most of them were male, because there is an imbalance between male and female HSTS. So this model had developed where you had a centre which was a centre of excellence, but its expertise was based in dealing with people who were homosexual. And with homosexuals, it's really quite easy. It's not complicated, because once you've established that they are actually homosexual, right, then it's really just a question of establishing, do you want to live as a pseudo-man or as a woman? And if you want to live as a woman, we'll help you. That's basically it. There's not really much in the way of complicated stuff has to be done here. When the AGPs came along, that changed completely. And by the late 90s, early 2000s, AGPs were clogging up all of the clinics, including the already beginning to clog up the Tavistock, the Portland and Tavistock brand, with their requirements, so-called. But AGPs are notoriously difficult to deal with because they're like cats at a door, It's like, will I, won't I, will I, won't I, will I, won't I? I've talked before about binging and purging. When an AGP is on a binge, then that man might well go to the clinic and say, I want to transition. And then when he's purging, he goes, no, I'm not doing that. Oh, no, you're not cutting my cock off. So huge amounts of clinical time was being taken up by these people. Time which could have been better used to help HSTS, to be quite honest with you. Now, the situation got even worse in around about 1990 when the current flush of so-called ROGD came along. Now, most ROGD occurs in females. It is, in fact, a neurosis of adolescence in females. And it's very similar to things like bulimia, anorexia, self-harm, a whole range of issues that do affect adolescent females, but generally speaking do not affect adolescent males. Okay, so between 2009 roughly and 2018, which is just under 10 years, you had a 4,000% increase in the numbers of this kind of people who were coming forward. Now, most of them do not actually have what I would call gender dysphoria. They have a socially induced neurosis, a condition which has been brought about by the specific nature of being a young woman in a place like Britain today, where you are told that the one thing you must never do is the one thing that you are actually evolved to do, which is have babies. It's like, no, you've got to go and have a career, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to blah, 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 but no, none of that making baby stuff. You come here sometime, just come here sometime to Southeast Asia and show me how many anorexics there are, show me how many bulimics there are, show me how many self-harmers, and show me how many ROG there are. And there are absolutely none. I mean, maybe there's one or two, but basically it doesn't exist. Why doesn't it exist? Because the girls start having babies when they're 17, 18, 19, that sort of age, right? And even if they wait a little bit longer, they know they are going to have children. That's their purpose in life, to have a family. And that has been destroyed in the West by feminism. Make no mistake that the blame for this lies entirely with feminism, such that women are basically saying, well, what's the point? Why should I be a woman? Let's just be a man instead. And that is what's happening. So they're going along to clinics like the Tavistock with these insane ideas. And of course, after 2 or 3 years, they suddenly realize, oh, bloody hell, what have I done? What have I done? I've ruined my chances of motherhood. I've ruined my body. I've ruined my voice, because testosterone will do that, I've ruined my figure. I've ruined everything. All for this ridiculous crock of shit that is promoted by feminists. And on the other hand, we do have a lot of ROGD in males is actually adolescent onset autogynephilia. And I know that because I can see it here in the Philippines and across Southeast Asia. That can set on very, very rapidly. I mean, it's not unknown for somebody, on Friday to be a boy, and he's playing basketball, and he's dressed in his basketball top, and he's got his baggy pants on, and he's chasing the girls, he's got hairy legs and all the rest of it. And on Monday, he shows up as a girl, and he starts growing out his hair, and he's taking pills, and ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. It can actually be that quick. It can be really surprising, even in Southeast Asia, just how quickly AGP can set on. So there is that cohort inside this group of people who today are going to places like the Tavistock. There's another group, unfortunately, and this again is a group which is exists because of feminism. And what has happened over the last 20 years, more maybe, is that young males have been told that the worst thing you possibly can be is a man. And the worst of all is a white man. And even worse, a white Christian man. And for goodness sake, you must not ever, under any circumstances, be a successful white man, Christian. Right? You must not be these things. These things are immoral. That's what they're being taught in school. Don't you make any mistake about it. You go and find out what's being taught to your kids in school. And this is what it is. Boys are being told that the worst possible thing they can do, the worst possible outcome, is that they become successful men. So what are they going to do? Yes, you've got it, folks. They're going to go, well, maybe I'm transgender. Maybe I could be transgender. I mean, they're given this bull about how men, about the patriarchy, which doesn't exist, about how men control everything, how men start all the wars, which is all nonsense. It's all lies. And so to try to atone not only for their own, well, imaginary evils, but also to atone for all the terrible evils that all those terrible men in the past did, they have to be women. They have to not be men. You know, it's absolutely appalling. And feminists simply will not accept responsibility for this. It's their fault. All of this thing is the fault of feminism. And the idea that they said, they promoted it, that gender is just, you can choose it. Gender can be moved. Sex is real, but gender, doesn't matter. You can be any gender you like. The feminists are the ones who did this. Right? So let's get back to the Tavistock. Sorry, the Portman and Tavistock, as it once was, the Tavistock now. The Tavistock, yes, the actual Tavistock Centre is being closed, but the government has decided, and it comes from a report this all comes from a report, a study and investigation and a report done by Dr. Hilary Cass, who is very well known, and she said basically this single provider model of healthcare is unsafe. You know, she's not actually just talking about the Tavistock here. She's saying the whole model of the NHS, which is based on these large centres where everybody has to go for hundreds of miles to get the treatment, is not only inefficient, it's actually unsafe. And she says it's not a safe or a viable long-term option. So what is being proposed is that new centres, one based in London and one based in the northwest of England, should be fully open by the spring 2003. Right. So basically, these are just replacing the Tavistock, and they would run in conjunction with specialist children's hospitals, of which there are quite a few, including Great Ormond Street and Alderhay, many others, and they would work very closely together to provide a network of care rather than this, one provider fits all idea. And I completely agree with this. I think this is an absolutely brilliant move. It will bring the services that are required closer to the people who require them. And that's always a good thing. This whole thing about you move the people and you keep the services centralised was always a bad idea. It was a bad idea in all forms of care. It was particularly a bad idea in this form of care, because you're dealing with very young people. I mean, sometimes you could be dealing with kids who are 4 or 5, and they are expressing visible signs of childhood gender dysphoria, and they're being transported for hundreds of miles, waiting for months, years. And Cass is very clear that the waiting lists that have been caused because of the nature of the model that's in place are ridiculous. They're unsustainable. The people now are waiting 4 to 5 years for a first appointment. A first appointment. That's absolutely insane. So if this move is successful in bringing care closer to the patients, the people who need it, and also is able to free up resources such that these grotesque waiting lists can be shortened, then what's the problem, guys? It's great. And Poxy Parker, don't get on your high horse, because the fact is, it's just going to continue. the healthcare provided by the tavistock will continue. It just won't be actually at the tavistock. Okay? I mean, I know you don't read. I know you're a stupid woman. But still, do try. Do try harder. And I would say to the nutcases on the TRA side, well, I mean, what are you complaining about? Now you're going to get more clinics closer to home. What's the bleeding problem? So that's the tavistock situation. I'm all for it. I think it's fine. I don't see a problem. The tavistock has really run into a lot of problems. It had issues because it was somewhat, at least, overtaken by TRA, that's trans activist political philosophy and ideology, and this is not a good thing. You know, I mean, just to recap my own position on this, because we've got a couple of minutes, I don't think that anybody who's not homosexual should be transitioning, right? I just don't think that's the case. I think that autogynephilic men should compartmentalize their lives, if they really have to, such that they contain and control the autogynephilic artifact. I do not think that it is reasonable for them to circulate in society as women. I think Rachel Levine is absurd. You know, and I don't agree with Ray Blanchard when he says, he may never have said that. He says, I don't use the term true transsexual. Well, I do. HSTS are true transsexuals. They really are transsexuals. The other ones are bloody transvestites. And all of these kids that are coming through now, they're basically, they're trenders. They're gender trenders. They think that they're politically, in political terms, their lives can be made better if they transition, which is absolutely ridiculous. You know, everybody who does it will tell you that transition is hard. It's tough. It takes hard work. And if you don't completely pass, you know, and only a very small number of potential transitioners actually will completely pass after transition, and most of them, nearly all of them in fact, probably 90%, are homosexual males, right? There are a very small number of AGPs who transition early who can do it, who can pull it off. I mean, they tend to be kind of big and tall and stuff like that, but they can still, if they learn the tricks, they can still be very attractive and, you know, they can be women, the hell, you know. But all of the gender trenders and all of this, you know, the multiplicity of genders and the non-binaries and all the rest of it, they need to go away and take a large walk round the forest and grow up. Because you cannot be these things. You cannot be non-binary. Sorry, it doesn't exist. You know, I came across a wonderful quote the other day in my reading, which discussed somebody as being, and I quote, a gay non-binary person. How the hell can you be a gay non-binary person? That's an absolute contradiction in terms. And that's what we've got to. We've got to this position where gender has been so confused that people don't really know what it is anymore. So let me remind you, gender is how you attract partners. Men are masculine to attract feminine women. Women are feminine to attract masculine men. And that is all there is to it. This is not rocket science. Okay, so that's it for me for today. Bitey. I'm sure I'll do something else while I've still got time here. But that is really the point. Is the Tavistock, yes, it's closing, but yes, it will be replaced by new clinics, which will be operational, it says here, and I've read 7 or 8 articles this morning, by spring of 2023. So don't panic. And meantime, Poxy and the rest of your pals, you can put the champagne away. You really can. And I'm happy about that, because I really like to see you people get it in the face. I really do. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.